All right, can you all see what's on the screen now from the PowerPoint?
Mhm.
Yes, good.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this presentation, the way it's set up, and there's no way of avoiding it, it's linear. And so it looks like things happened one after the other. They didn't. It's not a straight line from point A to point B on this journey. It's more like the flight path of a butterfly, where you're flitting from one thing to another, and then coming back again to the thing that you just left. So hopefully that will make sense. It says this meeting is being recorded on my screen. Does it show that on everyone's screen?
It did, and I believe you have to click continue.
Okay, there we go. All right, thank you very much for your help. So about 16 years ago, I took early retirement from teaching. And even though I had a lot more time to paint, I found that I was becoming very dissatisfied with my work. I felt like I hadn't found my own voice. I just kept doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so you can't keep traveling the same path and expect to arrive at a new destination, which is where you can't get there from here comes from, or at least in part. So I tried different media. I tried oils and lino cut prints and acrylics and pencil crayons and pen and ink. And then eventually I just stopped making paintings altogether. But I still spent lots of time in my studio playing with paint and reading about paintings and paint and looking at paintings. So what did I do in my studio if I wasn't making paintings? Well, I made color charts. I did sketches on location. I traveled. I drew things with pen and ink. And I investigated the world of social media and read art books and visited museums. So at one point, I took out all of my paints, and some of the paints, the watercolors, hadn't been used since I purchased them for workshops. And I just began to what if. I experimented with triads and mother colors, and eventually I found a new palette of transparent, non-staining colors that I liked. And I began to use this palette both in my sketchbook and in small paintings. And eventually I began to make paintings again. At the same time, I was often working in pen and ink, and when I showed my drawings to Hilda Marks and Gray, she told me that they reminded her of Aubrey Beardsley's work. I had always loved Art Nouveau, but I didn't know this artist, and so I looked him up online and immediately fell in love with his sinuous arabesque lines and interlacing forms I played. And though I didn't realize it at the time, looking back now, I see that he has had an influence on my floral paintings, and in particular, this whiplash line, which is often where I begin. So now that I had a palette, I needed to figure out how I was going to organize my work. And so I began to do these whiplash lines on a full sheet of watercolor paper. And I tried to use my whole arm working from my shoulder just to make these lines. And they were the thing that allowed me to organize the placement of flowers and leaves. And I just did a very cursory sketch here so that you could see what I was talking about. And I started from the bottom right-hand corner and worked my way up and out after I'd placed things on that previous line that I showed you. And the reason I started at the bottom corner and worked my way up and out was because it was the exact opposite to the way that I had been told and taught to paint. And with that whole idea of you can't get there from here, you can't get something new if you keep using the same old methods, I decided to do that. And this is just the progression from where I began in the bottom right corner and then worked my way across and up the page. And that was the end result of that painting. So now that I had a method of organizing my work and a new palette, I decided that I would just follow the Clan Matheson insignia, which is make and hope or do and hope. Matheson was my maiden name. So the first painting that I did using this new palette and new method was inspired by a sketching trip with my friend Cheryl out to the Fanshawe Pioneer Village. And while we were there, I sketched buildings and fences and all sorts of things, but I kept noticing all of these flowers all around me. When I got home, I decided I was going to try and be inspired by those fields of wildflowers. This is a half sheet, and it took me 4 weeks to complete because the methodology that I was using and the paints that I were using were all new to me. Again, inspired by our sketching trip to Fanshawe Pioneer Village, this was the second painting that I attempted using the new methods and new palette of colors. It was a full sheet, and it took me 6 weeks to complete. So these two paintings really were the beginning of me finding my voice. They sort of lit me on fire with a desire to get down into my studio and work every day, or to go out collecting images to use in my paintings. So I found this, and it sort of rang true to me. Light yourself on fire with passion and people will come for miles to watch you burn. The gallery painting group had a celebration of Canada's 150th anniversary. And so this is the painting that I did for that particular show. Again, using the same arabesque lines to figure out where I was going to place leaves and flowers, and starting in the bottom right-hand corner and working my way up and out across the page. We were asked to use Canadian symbols and something in red and white. And I eventually, after a lot of thought, settled on trilliums. The reason being that they came in both red and white and also pink. But to me, trilliums were here long before there was a Canada. There were Carolinian forests that went from Windsor all the way to the St. Lawrence and north to the Canadian Shield. And all of this area was populated by tens of thousands of First Nations peoples. And I couldn't help but think that every spring they must have been just as thrilled and excited to see all of the trilliums in the forests as I am every year when I see them, especially at locations that we've been to with the gallery painting group. And so that's what I settled on, and that this is the painting that resulted from that. This painting was inspired by a walk through our neighborhood where one of my neighbors had windflowers growing. And so I decided to paint them. This painting is called All You Need. And again, it was inspired by wildflowers growing on the side of the road. I entered it in the Ontario Society of Artists members exhibition, and it was accepted. Some of you may be familiar with this painting. It was my painting that was selected for the diploma collection of the Canadian Society of Painters in Watercolor. And if you look, you can see the arabesque lines that I used to organize my paintings. They're everywhere all the way through. So not only can you not get there from here, but sometimes when you get there, you won't find anything that looks like what my painting suggests. So the first one on the left is a painting from, again, Fanshawe Pioneer Village, and you can see the farmhouse back here. All of this floral and vegetation that's in the front wasn't there. I made it up, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But again, you can see these arabesque lines that manifest themselves everywhere throughout. The plant that has these big green leaves and pink stems is called a poke plant, and it is rampant out at Pioneer Village. And I fell in love with it. It just lends itself so well to the lines that I'm falling in love with. This next painting on the right is from France. Len Hughes and several others of us went to France several times. And one time we actually saw poppies, and I was so excited. I was so thrilled to see them. And I put them in front of this area of France, which didn't have poppies, but I put them there anyway. This is another poppy painting that I did. And again, you can see how these lines help me to place flowers and leaves, grasses. They're everywhere all the way through. This painting, I was trying to show how excited I was about the first time that I saw poppies growing wild in fields. And so I put all these little dots, all these little round circles all the way through. And some of them were white and some of them were other colors. And when I showed it to my husband, he said, why have you got all those little dots everywhere? And I said, well, I'm trying to show how excited I was. And he said, oh, I thought they were the bubbles from Blanquette, which is a wine we drank when we were there. So some of these are influences. Earlier on, I mentioned that I spent some time online, and the online art world introduced me to these three artists: Zachary Logan, Mrs. Delaney, and Shirley Trevena. Zachary Logan is a Canadian artist. He's from Saskatchewan, and I believe he works mostly in pastels and pen and ink, but his subject matter is dear to my heart. He does floral, wildflowers and weeds and things that grow in ditches. He has exhibited all over the world. And I was so thrilled to find somebody who thought that things that grew in ditches and along the fields and along fence lines made for interesting paintings. So I felt, oh, thank God, I'm not the only one who thinks that. This lady, Shirley Trevena, is British, and she has written several books and made many, many videos about watercolor painting. And she's big into breaking rules, and she uses a variety of materials as well as watercolor. But her paintings just take my breath away every time I see them. I have 3 of her books, and whenever I'm in a funk and don't know if I want to paint anymore, I get out her books and look through them and fall in love with watercolor all over again, and can hardly wait to get back in my studio. So I don't know how I came across this book. I think it was online. I think somebody mentioned it online. And it's about a lady whose name is Mrs. Delaney, and she's British. She lived from 1700 to 1788. And when she was 72 years old, she decided to start making art. And she did all of these fabulous collages, botanical collages. She dyed the paper first using watercolor, and then cut things out and glued them onto black paper. Her work is as accurate as any botanical painting, and she's influenced many modern day artists, myself included. But I was really, really surprised and delighted to discover when I was reading about Zachary Logan, the Canadian artist from Saskatchewan that I mentioned earlier, that he was inspired by not Molly Peacock, by Mrs. Delaney. Molly Peacock is the lady who wrote the book. And has done several paintings that he's titled after Mrs. Delaney. So other artists who have influenced me, a lady named Lara Gastiger, who is an American botanical artist, and she does what she calls a perpetual nature journal. So she gets a sketchbook and divides it up into weeks throughout the year, and does a little sketch for every week that she has in there. And then she goes back year after year after year, and it's kind of fun. So I decided this was just the thing I needed when we were locked down because we had our grandson with us. So I didn't have hours and hours to do paintings, but I did have enough time that I could do a little sketch every week. And that's what I did. Karen Stamper is a British artist. She does mostly abstract work in mixed media, but she does a lot of it in something called a concertina sketchbook. And I've called it Sea Bright here. That's not correct. It's Sea White concertina sketchbooks. And they're incredible little books. They fold all up, and you've got 70 sheets that you can work with. I'll show you in a minute what I mean. Linda Kemp is somebody who certainly has influenced me. She's Canadian. She's a member of Canadian Society of Painters and Watercolor. You're all familiar with her, I'm sure. But she, reading her books and studying what she does has really taught me a lot about composition and design, and particularly negative painting to result in being able to have depth in your paintings. Jane Champagne was a teacher and workshop leader, a friend. I took a couple of trips with her up to Killarney. Painting the Ontario Landscape is a book that she wrote, which I used to get out of the library all the time. And then it disappeared. This was prior to me ever meeting Jane. And then I had the opportunity to meet Jane at an art show and told her about how much I enjoyed painting the Ontario Landscape and how sadly someone had decided that they needed it more than the library and had never returned it. And later on that year, I attended a workshop with Jane. And lo and behold, she had one of her books for me, which she wrote a nice inscription in, so it was delightful. And last but certainly not least, Hilda Markson Gray, who is a teacher and a friend and a traveling companion and a kindred spirit, a great person to get lost with, which is where You Can't Get There From Here also comes from. Hilda and I, on several occasions, went to Central Ontario Art Association. We had exhibited work with them. And so we were taking work there to drop it off and also to pick it up. And the first time we went, each of us thought the other person knew how to get to where we were going or had some sense of direction. And to our mutual horror, we discovered that neither one of us had A, a sense of direction, or B, could read maps. And so we were reduced to stopping at gas stations and asking people how to get from one place to another. And frequently we were told you can't get there from here, which just sent us into panic mode. But eventually we got to where we needed to be, and we also got home, which was a good thing. So this is Jane Champagne in 2007 at Johnny Lake. And Jane had had serious health issues prior to this and had been able, in spite of them, to come and conduct a workshop up at Johnny Lake. And she said to me at the time, you know, Sue, I didn't think I'd ever be able to get back here. This is an area of Ontario that she had spent as artist in residence at Killarney Mountain Lodge several years. And it was an area she was in love with. So sketchbooks, back to them again. My preferred types of sketchbooks are Stillman and Byrne, the Beta or Zeta series. They name these things unusual names, but both of these are have paper in them that is very strong. And so you can use washes of watercolor, you can erase, you can lift, and you can use pen and ink. They're terrific. They're available in hardcover with or without the ring binding, and they're also available in softcover, which I haven't used. They come in a variety of sizes, and the small size travels well. I order them online. Currys doesn't carry them in London anymore. And again, this is wrong. This shouldn't be bright. This should be white, sea white concertina. And they're also available in small and large hardcover. And it has a hardcover case to hold it all together when you're not using them. And I ordered these online from the United Kingdom. So here they are. This is a concertina sketchbook. You can see it folds all up like an accordion, hence the name. And both sides are usable because it's a double sheet here. So whatever you put here isn't going to bleed through to the other side because it's another completely separate piece of paper on the other side. This is the Stillman and Byrne. This is the one that has the ring binding. Some of these are sketchbooks that I made myself. And I don't know whether you can tell or not, but this is the case that this folds all up and fits in, and I decorated it because that's just the way I am. And more sketchbook stuff. Okay, this is another shot of the concertina. The thing that I like about these concertina sketchbooks is you can start off in one section of your garden and continue on and on if you feel like that, making that progression, or you can just immerse yourself in something. So I started off with just doing one little section of these nasturtiums, and I kind of fell in love with them. And so I just kept going and going and going, and you can just go forever. So these are the hardcover. I like them for on location sketching. You don't need to bring an easel or anything. You can just, they support themselves. These plants, vegetation are from a gallery painting group paint out that we took. So this again was a gallery painting group, and I sat on a pathway beside a small hill where dandelions were growing, and they were right at my eye level. I mean, usually they're down by your feet, right? So this was a whole new perspective, and sketching these dandelions, I kind of fell in love with them. And so I ended up doing a whole lot of paintings of dandelion leaves, but still you can see these arabesque lines, and the leaves lend themselves to that kind of thing too. And this is another sketch with the gallery painting group. We were on Quaker Road, and I was sketching all of these things growing at the fence line. And one of the ladies that I was there with, Anne, came up to me and she said, I just had to come and see what you were doing, because from where I was, it looked like you were just staring at that tree bark. And I couldn't imagine why you'd positioned yourself there. But this was what I was doing. There were raspberries growing in there and lots of other goodies. So again, starting at the bottom, working up and then across. And that's the finished piece. So thank you very much for listening to me blather on about my paintings. I hope you enjoyed it. And I always try to remind myself, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Thank you very much. Now I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
So not so much a question, but just a comment. I believe Curry's locally here in London does now carry.
Oh, that's good to know. That's great. Thanks, Lynn.
The Stubborn and Burn sketchbooks, and they had quite an array of them.
Oh, that's good.
Before the shutdown, so I don't know whether they're still on.
Good to know. I gave up because I'd been there several times, and there would be, you know, one, and it would be that paper that people like to use for pencil crayon or pastel, you know, that gray, soft, not good for what I do at all. So that's good to know. Saves me ordering online. Thanks.
Susan, you said at the beginning, you talked about how long paintings took you. So you sort of implied it sped up. Is that true?
I'm sorry?
Does it still take you as long to do a painting?
No. And I should have said that when I first started, because I didn't really know what I was doing, and it was all experimental to me. The colors were new. I wasn't sure how they would react together, and going from the bottom corner up, and then going back in and trying to get backgrounds by doing several layers of the negative painting. So there was a lot of it took me a lot of time, because like anything, when you first start, it takes you a lot of time. Now, I don't spend that long at all. I would say for a full sheet painting, depending, of course, on how complicated it is, but I can probably do a full sheet in about a week. That's if I'm, you know, painting steadily from a good portion of the day. But it certainly doesn't take me 6 to 8 weeks anymore. Thank you. I should have made that clear.
I just wanted to share with you that I, too, an admirer of Jane Champlain's book, Painting on Location.
Oh, that's nice. That's
I've got
wonderful.
that one. Painting trips in different sections around the GTA and in the near north.
Yeah,
That was a wonderful book.
it was. And I found she has such a common sense approach to problems that you run into when you're painting on location.
Yes,
It was
yes.
invaluable. It really and truly was. And
I
she
liked
was
it.
a wonderful person too. I really enjoyed Jane.
I liked her sketches and how she illustrated her book, even with what to bring along.
Yes, her sense of humor just pops out of those, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes. And Zachary Logan was an artist in residence at the McMichael about 4 years ago. I got a chance to hear his talk.
Oh, how lucky are you? That's
Yeah.
great. I know he was the artist in residence just a short time ago at Guelph. And he's had, I think, residencies in several locations, but I just find his work to be interesting. Now, he also, besides botanical, he likes to incorporate the human form and often
Yes.
his own form. He's great into frontal nudes, but he's just remarkable. I think his work is extraordinary.
Well, I certainly appreciate having been introduced to the group by Marlene. Certainly watching your presentation, Susan, you really have a vibrant style.
Thank you.
With your flowers and plants, and it's I'm really enjoying this experience. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm enjoying it too. It's great that Anita has organized this for us.
What if we get back to gallery view where we can see each other?
Okay, I don't know how to do that, but I'll try.
Unshare somehow, but I don't know either. Maybe one of us will tell you.
Okay, it says stop share. Maybe I'll just click that.
Okay,
There we go. There we are.
thank you.
Lots of new learning experiences here.
I just wanted to say thank you, Susan.
Oh, you're welcome.
No, I've always looked at your pieces and I just, how does she do that?
Now you know.
For someone who's starting off with hopefully a bit of a watercolor practice, I now have some insight, and I've always loved your colors and your style, and it's very genuine and very
Oh, thank
unique.
you. Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Yeah, I got a lot out of
Thank
that.
you, thank you, Susan.
Oh,
And
you're more than
it's,
welcome. I
very,
quite
very
enjoyed putting
interesting
this
to see.
together. You sort of start to learn things about yourself that they were in the back of your head probably, but you didn't really, until you start to articulate things, you didn't really know exactly what was going on. But this is not the only, the arabesque lines on the paper is not the only way that I organize work. I have a couple of methods. One of them is from my sketchbook. I'll have probably 30 drawings of say trilliums, and so I'll go through and I'll trace all of those drawings of trilliums and then put them on a sheet of watercolor paper and start moving them around. And sometimes there'll be an arabesque line there and sometimes not, and just moving them around and then going away and then coming back another day and looking at it and moving things around until I get something that I'm happy with. And then the fun begins, where you're taping all of those things together and then carrying it over to a light box and tracing it out. It's kind of labor intensive. I prefer the other method, the arabesque lines and working directly onto the watercolor paper. But oh, I should have mentioned too, when I'm doing that, I'm using a 2B pencil. It's a soft pencil. The reason I use that is, first of all, when I get excited, I tend to press hard. And so if I'm getting excited when I'm doing the work, I press hard. And if you're using anything harder than 2B, you end up making grooves in your watercolor paper. So the 2B, it doesn't really matter how hard. And second, lift it up. Eraser. So I'll have the whole thing all over the page. And then if I'm painting the bottom right-hand corner, I'll lift all the graphite so it's just very, very faint, and then go to the next part and lift. The reason I lift graphite in sections is because I learned, to my horror, that if you do the whole thing, eventually those kind of disappear. So I just do it a section at a time. And that works for me.
I just want to say, Susan, I really enjoyed your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I was excited when I saw your plein air paintings. No, it's like instant art on your journal books, and you can see your growth too. When I love doing plein air myself, but you can see the changes of every year, the seasons and excitement in your sketches. Love it.
Oh, thanks so much, Fab. I appreciate that. Well, I think unless there are any more questions, I guess.
I just wanted to welcome you to the society. Congratulations on your
you.
membership. And I thought your work reminded me of some of our members, Barbara Large and Irene Knott in the diploma collection, if you look up their work.
Okay, Barbara,
Large and Irene Knott,
thank you.
or Cott. Maybe there's no N in it.
I will have a look.
Okay.
Thanks.
Susan, that was such a joy to see your work and to hear you speak about how you approach things and just the way that you use the line through. Thank you so much for
Oh,
sharing
thank
with
you,
us
Linda.
today.
You've taught me so much through your
aren't you
books,
kind?
and I've had the good fortune of attending art classes with Hilda Marks and Gray, and on a couple of occasions, fellow students had taken workshops with you, and so they came back and showed us what they were doing. So it's been really a wonderful thing to get to know your work and your methods. So thank
well,
you.
you've certainly taken the ideas and made them your own and in your own
Thank you.
direction. So thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Susan, and for sharing your insight and also your process. And it's a wonderful, wonderful experience just to be here listening to you and seeing your work. And it's really, really inspiring to me. So thank you.
Alice. I was kind of worried there for a bit. I didn't know whether we
Well, you are so
we were
natural.
going to be able to get the stuff on the screen, but I'm kind of a Luddite, really, and so technology.
Actually, you do it so naturally.
Unfortunately, in our house, I'm the tech expert, so there's nobody to help me. But anyway, it all worked out, so that's good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation. I mean, I know your work and I know you, and I've seen you work on location. You've seen me work on location too.
Right.
I've never really had an opportunity to sort of get a in-depth overview of your journey and influences and how things have changed. And I know you used to work from one side to another side of painting, which always intrigued me. I thought, well, how surely should do large blocks of color, and but now I've got a better appreciation, and
well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate
I have to work that way, Len, because unlike you, I can't paint on location. You do such fabulous paintings on location. I work in my sketchbook. I get so frustrated on location painting. One out of maybe 50 will work out, and the rest are just fodder for painting, test paintings. So everybody does things differently, I guess.
But lots of those too. Thanks, Lynn.
You're welcome, Len. How are you liking your new home?
Oh, we're settled in. Finally
Good.
got settled down. And I've got a new office and new watercolor studio up here. And
Perfect.
oil studio downstairs. So all I got to do
how
is
great
get
is that?
Pardon?
How great is that? I expect to see good things from you.
I'll do my best.
You always do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Susan. It's Jane Hunter speaking. I don't know if you can, I've lost me on the screen. I don't know where I went, but can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Good. But I just want to say how I love your vibrant colors.
Oh, thank you.
And particularly the rhythm in your work, which maybe it's because I love music and dance that that's very important when I'm doing a painting, and it's very evident in yours. And thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Very delightful, just visual
Certainly did.
effects.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan.
Goodbye,
Thank you, Sue.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.
See you next month. Bye-bye.
For those who are still here, I'm very, very sorry for this. My sound system is gone. I could see everyone, but it is recording, so I'll be sending that out. Also posting it on the new page in the CSPC Members Connecting with Members group. So if you haven't joined that yet, please look it up on Facebook. So this will be emailed to you and it'll be posted. I do have a new laptop on order because this has fried on me a few times, but never in a situation where everybody. So sorry about it, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks, Anita.
Anita.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's wonderful.